Coogs House, a very missed Houston Cougar in the transfer portal, now knows his home, and it leaves people wondering if there might be some foul play involved.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. But you make your first listen each and every day for the everydayers out there. If you want to join the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. If you like, what shape of tortilla chips. I'm more of a triangle, like a really thin triangular. Some of you like the circles, some of you like the scoops. I'm more of a Frito scoops person. I'm going to scoop. Tell me in the comments down below what your shape of tortilla chip is. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we get more on that fun later. But first and foremost, I do want to talk some today about a number of different things. One, as I am wearing my Houston blue here, somewhat unintentionally so, but we're talking about the blue baseball uniforms later, a little bit more on that. Some projections for the starting basketball lineup, because I had a fun conversation with people online about that. I want to continue to expand on next year's basketball team as we get ready for that. It's an exciting time. But first, let's talk some about what happened with AJ Haulcy, the all Big 12, Phil Steele All-American, projected to be all kinds of stuff next season, safety from Houston into the transfer portal. Felt like seconds after the spring game concluded. It was later that day. It wasn't seconds after, but it was very soon after. And he entered the transfer portal feeling like seconds after the spring game, playing all of the first team reps in the spring game. And then it was very quickly assumed, and I had talked to some people that I think knew what they were talking about, that he was going to the Miami Hurricanes to follow and play with Zach Etheridge, who had been his defensive back coach at the University of Houston. So, people thought it made sense. Hard to hate on a guy for that, for going to a coach who'd been successful under. All the best, Sorry, don't let the way up, but whatever, right? He came to Houston as a transfer from New Mexico, and the continued upward trajectory. He looks like a pro safety, right? And he was one of a handful of defensive backs, safeties, corners alike, to jump in the transfer portal. Just the day before the spring game, Jeremiah Wilson, the top corner in the state of Texas, returning for 2025, I'm about to say 2025, also jumped in the transfer portal. Jeremiah Wilson is heading to Florida State. Maurice Williams heading to Arizona State. Keontae Scott has not announced where he's going. He actually hadn't played a game yet for the Cougars. He transferred in the earlier window from Auburn to Houston, presumably to play with Zach Etheridge, and it's presumed that he will be transferring to Miami after having entered the transfer portal post-spring game as well to go play for Zach Etheridge again. Again, he played well for Zach Etheridge at Auburn once upon a time. It all makes sense. But Haulcy, leading in the win all the way around here, Haulcy is heading to LSU, much closer to home, the greater Houston area native. It came theoretically home from New Mexico. That was part of the reason he wanted to come play for Houston. And he ends up at LSU, and there were a lot of people very quick to point out that LSU's famed alum Malik Nabers of New York Giants, president of the New York Giants, was kind of randomly at the Houston spring football game. He does work out in Houston. He trains in Houston, but Malik Nabers is a LSU alum and is a New York Giant, and is therefore a little out of place on the Houston Cougars sideline. And a lot of people worried. We talked to Brian Smith about this the other day when he came on to talk about transfers and portals and recruiting and stuff like that. A lot of people were worried that he was on the sidelines recruiting Keyshawn Henderson, the #1 player in the state of Texas in class 2026 that is committed to the Houston Cougars. People were worried he was trying to pull him to LSU. And now it appears people are worried that that is not what happened. It was actually that he pulled a guy like Haulcy to LSU. And in the quick, 2 lines, he said, I forget it was On3 or 24/7. Whoever first reported it got the story from Haulcy. Haulcy pointed out that he went to LSU because of how many defensive backs they put in the pros in the last decade or whatever. It's kind of a hotbed for that, and it's where pro scouts go to look and right. Whatever. We could talk about Jones. We could talk about people from Houston in the pros too, but that's not really what he was talking about. And I want to squash that a little bit. And I say a little bit because I don't want to act like there was no conversation between Malik Nabers and AJ Haulcy about what life is like at LSU. I can't guarantee that. No one you talk to outside of Haulcy and Nabers themselves could guarantee that, in all honesty. And I don't think either one of them will say that at this point. I do want to point out, however, when we talked to Brian wasn't available at this moment to talk. He does a lot of work with a show called Locked On the Portal, which I recommend you go check out. But when he came on to talk to us about Keyshawn in the same situation, he said it felt like a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, little brother syndrome. And Brian was quick to point out that, a lot of guys from the greater Bayou and some outside of that even enjoy spending time in Houston for, let's call it recreation, right? Malik Nabers I went to high school in Youngsville, Louisiana. I had to look that up to be sure. He's went to high school in Youngsville, Louisiana, which is a little over it says almost 3.5 hours from Houston. I did have to look it up. I didn't know where it was off the top of my head or anything like that. It's also about 3 hours from New Orleans. It's kind of equidistant, frankly. And it would make total sense that he would be training in a big city like Houston, working out with trainers in a big city like Houston, facilities in the city of Houston, enjoying the city of Houston, and that he is enjoying some football on a Saturday. I don't think that that's anything too crazy. Now, as far as what he's doing and who he's talking to and those kinds of things, again, I think there's a lot of people concerned about this than the other. But if you believe in Fritz's vision, believe in what they're putting together, believe in the rebuild process, and frankly, believe in what Keyshawn is telling you, it doesn't sound like anything they're going to tell Keyshawn from a Malik Nabers perspective is going to work, right? I feel similarly about AJ Haulcy in this instance. Not that there was no bug planted. The argument against this would be that AJ Haulcy was predicted to Miami. Everyone at Miami certainly thought he was going there. The visit to LSU was scheduled relatively late in the process. It felt like they kind of swooped in there at the end to snatch him up. But also, he was the number one player in the portal. Everyone wanted him. I'm sure he was fielding phone calls from a lot of people. And it sounds honestly kind of like what might be a significant do-or-die hot seat season for Brian Kelly there in Louisiana, at Louisiana State. They might have thrown a fairly – I hadn't talked to AJ about it, so I don't mean to say like I'm counting his checks or whatever, but I think it's fair to say that if Brian Kelly said, hey, my butt's on the hot seat, I got to get some safety help. This dude's the number one player in the portal. What can we figure out here? And then they went and got him. And he mentioned, and the reporting afterwards, again, the strength and the number of pro defensive backs they've put in the NFL. I thoroughly loved watching AJ Haulcy play at Houston, but my criticism was he felt like a 2005 safety, not a 2025 safety, and that's great for college. I don't know what it means for the pros, right? I think he's probably going to go show that he can do both, and that's great for him. He is heading to LSU. Jeremiah Wilson to Florida State. Maurice Williams Jeremiah Wilson to Florida State. Maurice Williams to Arizona State. Keontae Scott, we presume Miami. And that's the most recent crop of DBs going to the portal. If you go back to the earlier windows, like Juwan Gasson's going to Middle Tennessee State. Jalen Emery, West Kentucky. Jalen Stanford, Sam Houston. Hershey McLaurin hasn't been picked up. Last I saw, and then a reserve guy named Tegan Wilk went to East Carolina. Like the more recent group were guys that they played the spring out and are now looking to go to theoretically big time programs. Maurice went to Arizona State's a little interesting, although some of that might just be a fresh start. He was having trouble finding time on the field at the University of Houston, and it came during the week of exit interviews, and he may be I don't mean to speak for him or anything like that, but that's the kind of timing where, like, okay, did he hear something he maybe didn't like about what he was going to be asked to do if he wanted to get on the field, or how he'd be fitting into that plan or whatever. But all those guys go into Power 4 programs. And that frankly says a lot about the defense Houston had last year. We both knew they were good, but says a lot about the defense they had last year. It also stings a little as we're looking to continue the rebuild. As much as we think the offense will be improved this fall, that hurts the defensive side of things for sure. Now, we talked ad nauseum about the guys they brought in to replace these guys. We'll probably talk more football roster over the next few days. But right now, I want to get to a little bit about a basketball roster that I had some fun talking to someone on the internet about, some people on the internet about, and kind of what that could look like. But first, today's show is, as we mentioned at the top, brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. I know the Rockets are out, but they're still going on, I promise. And every night delivers all kinds of highlight performances and big momentum shifts, can't miss moments across the NBA landscape. And whether it's a game-winning shot, breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And quick payouts, $200 and bonus bets added if your first $5 bet hits. FanDuel is the perfect time to sign up right now. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get another $200 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here, and we're talking Houston's future lineup in basketball, mostly because, honestly, after talking about the highly touted class coming out of a weekend where Kingston, Flemings, and Cenac absolutely dominated an all-star game, the Iverson Classic, it was talked about online a lot, like, okay, well, what does this mean for the lineup? What happens out of this? It's always a great question. It's always a great thought process to get through at this point, because we kind of got to measure with and without Milos Uzan. I will say at this point, I am assuming Milos Uzan is returning to Houston. I'm still seeing projections for him in the early part of the second round. That's not, to me, enough of a reason to gamble on that, not guaranteed contract kind of thing if you get picked in the second round versus if you were to leap into the late first. To me, I'd want to hear like in the early 20s, because then even if you fall a little bit, right, especially the opportunity to come back to Houston, make good NIL money. Houston's doing really well in the NIL world in basketball. Shouts to the folks in charge of that, Landon Gosling and those guys, right? But also a chance to prove that you can work on those things that the combine folks told you to work on. So with both Milos and Ramon Walker, who is seeking medical redshirt, this is the roster I've got on here for 2025, 2026. And for the folks at home that are listening on audio platforms, I'll read through this, but this is my newer version of what I'm saying as the rotations chart with Milos Uzan. I see the starters as Milos, Pop Isaacs, Manuel Sharp, Chris Cenac, JoJo Tugler. That's a new transfer in Pop Isaacs. Obviously, he comes in with a lot of minutes under his belt, having played at Texas Tech, played at Creighton, and played very well at both those instances. Kind of fills in that LJ Cryer role pretty well as a scorer. The freshman starter in this would be Chris Cenac at the 4. Honestly, this is the kind of guy, Cenac, if you have not watched him play yet, that in like a 2003 world where you could go straight out of high school, he probably would have gone straight to the NBA. He's a projected top 10 pick next year in the draft after just based off his high school stuff last year. This is a Jarris Walker kind of situation where he is signed up to be coached by Kelvin Sampson, the Cougs. He wants to come and develop his game in the way the Cougs develop players. But he's talented enough that he is going to be on the floor a lot as a freshman. Then as my rotation guys, I got Kingston, Fleming, Mercy Miller, and the backcourt, Isaiah Harwell kind of playing that 3. He can also play some of the 2. I don't think he's quite a 4. Jacob McFarland, I do think is a backup 4. I think Sedlot will play a lot of the 5. We know that Stanton likes to play guys that he's had before and trusts. Sed's been in the system. He also offers a very unique type of athlete. I have end of rotation KJ at the end of the point guard rotation. Very talented point guard room. No shame in that. Chase McCarty, I think, is still a 3. So I kind of have him in that wing. I could also see him being a small ball 4. Ramon Walker, assuming he gets the medical red shirts, also being a small ball 4. And they've got Khalifa Sacco, the transfer from Sam Houston State, as the end of the bench rotation 5. I could be proven wrong in that he has size you cannot teach. We've seen what that does for Houston before. You could obviously bring one of those guys in. And I think that's what's interesting about that lineup is you've got, frankly, your second lineup there. Kingston, Mercy, Isaiah, Jacob, and Sedlot probably breaks 500 in the Big 12. And I don't say that to be cocky. I say that to say that the challenge for this team is going to be not who starts games, but who finishes them. Because if both Kingston and Milos, or both Mercy and Pop, or both Isaiah and Emmanuel are having strong games, how do you decide who fits in where, who can play a different position, who slides over, right? That presents challenges. And I know that early in the season, we can anticipate Kelvin trusting guys that have been around. Emmanuel, Milos, JoJo, Mercy, right? Guys that have been through the fire with him before. But as we've seen in the past, whether it was JoJo Tugler's freshman year, Manuel Sharp's freshman year, Marcus Sasser's freshman year, like guys earn his trust over the course of their freshman season, and freshmen play a lot more in February and in March, right? And so who those guys are will be interesting to watch. I imagine you'll see a lot of lineups with both Kingston and Milos as 2 6'4 plus guards that can both bring the ball up with incredible speed, very different types of skills, both true point guard skill sets. Kingston, the more athletic high flyer. Milos, stronger, at this point a much better shooter, right? Offer different kind of problems on the same court at the same time. Team could have a little problem with that, right? I do entertain the idea of what happens with no Milos Uzan, because I think what you see there is actually 2 freshmen starting. I think this move there is to slide Kingston Fleming at the point guard spot, play Pop at the 2, and then go Emmanuel, Chris, and JoJo, just like you did with Milos there. I do think, though, that Popeyes will get some rotation at the point guard spot, kind of splitting that secondary point guard with Cordell as well. I also could just see run with a lot of Kingston Flemings minutes and just say the more you learn, the better. But you got to remember, when Pop slides to the point guard for some relief for Kingston there, that will be Mercy Miller at the 2. That will be Emmanuel Sharp and Isaiah Harwell at the floor at the same time. That will be, frankly, more opened up there. You also see, I think, more Cordell Jefferson in that lineup without Milos Uzan. I still think the big man rotation kind of feels the same. Ramon Walker and the question mark there could obviously lead to more Chase McCarty minutes and whatnot. He's coming in as a redshirt freshman, and so he's got a lot of time left in the program. So I don't think it's anything to get down about. If you're a Chase McCarty fan, there's lots of things to be a fan of in that kid. It's just a crowded room, and again, most people's top team returning in America next year, right? And so that's the way that goes. I will say, as the Debbie Downer sorts, there are guys like Cordell and Chase at the end of that bench that if you were to tell me, hey, Parker, are these guys looking to play and looking to play soon, they might look elsewhere. I don't know. The Milos Uzan decision could ultimately change what Cordell Jefferson thinks. And I'm not, and as I was mentioning, the football segment at the top of this, I'm not a love lost kind of guy. Like, if you want to find somewhere to go be successful and you've given time to this program, I don't feel any kind of way about it. I do think, though, that KJ offers a lot of toughness that this team needs, especially in those behind the scenes kinds of ways that, honestly, Malik Wilson did a couple years back when he was redshirted for transferring a second time. And he was like giving the guys all that work on defense behind the scenes. I think you see a lot of that kind of stuff out of KJ too. I say you see a lot of that kind of stuff. We don't see that kind of stuff because it's not out on television, but it's the kind of stuff that when you talk to anyone in the program, that's what's happening, right? And so I don't want him to go. I don't want Chase to go. These are talented basketball players that offer a lot to this program. it just is a team that's a shot to be the number one team in America and cut down nets next April. And that's how talented the room is when you're that kind of a team, right? Now, I also look at this lineup without Milos, and I say a lot of people will say, like, okay, you're starting two freshmen. Kelvin never does that. That's why he's going to start Pop Isaacs and Mercy Miller. And to that I say, but you're starting Pop Isaacs coming off of a year where he was injured. You'd be starting him out of position at the point guard spot. He'd be learning that position as your starter. And as much as we loved watching Mercy Miller play last year as a freshman, it was sparingly. And so how much more game minutes does he really have versus if you're going to have Kingston as your point guard for hopefully a couple of years, right? He is the kind of guy with pro potential. I just don't know when it hits. It could be after freshman year, I guess. If he had a great freshman year, my thought is, shouldn't you, just like you did with Milos last year, put him in the fire? Let him play all those Vegas minutes against top caliber opponents, right? Those games, in the grand scheme of things, don't lead to you winning the Big 12 in terms of wins and losses. They lead to the winning the Big 12 in terms of experiences, right? And so if it does come down to Milos Uzan goes pro, we wish him the best of luck. I still think you'd start Kingston and you roll with the punches there. You start two freshmen, you bring Azar Harwell in a lot. I still think Bryce Jackson ultimately redshirts unless Ramon Walker does not get his medical redshirt. You just need someone in that 14th jersey. I think that what you're going to see here is Bryce Jackson become a guy that is a developed part of this program. He can score. He can light up from the outside. He's going to continue to work on other aspects of his game. Missed a lot of high school hurt, right? And so he's got to work on those kinds of things. If you ask people around Houston, though, Houston Hoops guys, Shadow Creek guys, like people that knew about his high school games, like he can flat go. He just hasn't had the reps yet. So I think it's a red shirt in either situation. I say all to say a lot to unpack here. We'll know more if Milos comes back or doesn't come back. We'll know more as the offseason gets further into it. We'll know more, of course, of summer workouts, if guys change decisions or whatever. But that's all in the future, and these are all fun thought experiments. In the much more immediate future, Houston plays A&M in baseball on Tuesday night, and they're going to be in the Blues. I want to talk about what that means in a second. But first, today's show is brought to you by buddies over at Upwork, because scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project, long-term partner, whatever it is, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. It's got cost-effective growth. Don't have to hire full-time. It helps you find affordable top-tier freelancers to help schedule and grow that company or business more efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Parker Ansett, Locked On Coogs here. And the Houston Cougar baseball program has a non-conference game on Tuesday night versus the Texas A&M Aggies, and a game we all would like to win for some in-state bragging rights. And Houston's going to break out the blue jerseys for this one for an in-state opponent. For what it's worth, I think it helps the blue jersey thing that this is a one-off game. It's not a series versus Baylor or a series versus Tech or series versus TCU where you got to pick a game within the series or whatever. This is a one-off game. It kind of makes it more unique. And so a chance for Houston to wear the blues. I think they look sweet. Sure, they're very untraditional, but they are blue with the script Houston across the chest, white with red outline on that Houston, and the hat is the white front, blue paneling around it with the red UH on the front of the hat. Pretty cool looking outfit, if I say so myself. I post on Twitter. I would like to see the official hats for sale, not just some knockoff version. And I say all of that to say that I'm excited about the Blues, as I have a blue Locked On Coug shirt on right here. I think that they look really clean always. But there are a lot of people that don't like the blue uniforms, that are more traditionalists, to say the least, and are quick to point out that Parker teams don't win in these. So I wanted some, backlogging and checking through things. And my official rank tally is that the football program is 1-1 in blue uniforms. They had a win over UTSA in the first outing in the Love You Blue uniforms. Then they lost to Baylor this past season. Men's basketball is 0-1 in the Love You Blue uniform. Don't see anything with the women's basketball program wearing them. They do wear a pink charitable jersey, though, as well, for their kind of off-colored accents to the season. Softball is 1-0 in a season they've had a whole lot of trouble winning games in. This year, they beat Incarnate Word, wearing their blue, same kind of thing, a one-off game against a State of Texas opponent. The women's volleyball team is 0-1. They lost a 3-0 sweep to Texas Tech in blue. Women's tennis are 0-1 in matches as a team. Did not go their way. Women's golf wore blue to the Jim West Challenge 2 years in a row. In the fall season, they came in second out of 12 in 2024, third out of 13 in 2023. And if you consider those finishes for women's golf as wins, because they're pretty strong, coming the top 2 or 3 out of the whole deal, that would be 4-3 as an athletic program in blue uniforms. If you don't count those golf things, it's not really a win. Then it's 2-3, because they also didn't quite lose those either. But that kind of weirdly puts a lot of pressure on Houston and these blue uniforms against the A&M Aggies. If they're considerably 2-3, then this would be to get the blue uniforms back to 500. Again, there are a lot of people want to throw them out and say they're not Houston Cougar red. Why are we wearing them? They continue to be a 1 game per season kind of wear for the programs that wear it. It opened up a lot of merch sales, and for what it's worth, it feels like they do really, really well in sales in the greater Houston area in a way that expands the reach of the university. And I think that continues to be the push for this in 1 game a season per program, right? Is that then we can sell the merch, sell the pictures, sell the marketing, and really reach out to people you might not have been reaching before. And that's important in a day where the dollar is a big part of college sports. And frankly, I don't mean to be Debbie down to the folks that are traditionalists, but schools also change colors and mix up and have alternates all the time. The Houston Cougar men's basketball program got to the national championship game without wearing red once this season. They wore black on the road. They wore blue that one game. They wore white in neutral site and home games. They never had to wear red, right? And they were pretty successful, as successful as anyone since the golf team that won the championship before I was alive has been, right? And so I think that that's a fair way. Like, it's not always the big deal for the university is that it says Houston and University of Houston and Cougars on it, not necessarily colors. There's a whole time earlier in my life where you saw the Coogs wear like a lot of t-shirts or all navy. It was an accent color that turned into a lot of the swag. I'd much rather wear the light blue, the Columbia blue, than navy, but that's neither here nor there. Listen, the Ags are 10-14. They do have 4 guys with over 10 homers. They've got their own important series with Missouri this weekend. Houston's got Arizona State this weekend. Both teams could very well be looking ahead. The key for Houston's going to be focusing on the here and now, winning this bragging rights state rivalry game, whether it's because the excitement of the Blues or the excitement of the Aggies or whatever the case may be, right? You're hoping for a high-energy outing out of Houston on Tuesday night. Now, we'll talk about some at the end of Wednesday morning show, unless something chaotic we have to address earlier than that happens. And we'll be sure to kind of follow this along. Tagging this into the third segment's kind of been a joy. Actually, like I felt a little guilted into it, but following baseball and softball in the third segment, really baseball, softball's had trouble winning games and probably need a new coach. But following baseball in the third segment has been fun. I think we should probably keep it for whatever the rest of this run may be, just because it is a fun way to go. about this. We'll be, again, talking about whatever happens in this game on Wednesday morning. Locked on Coogs, primarily the Locked On podcast. Now we anticipate seeing you as an everydayer there tomorrow. Look for a second list today. Go check out Locked On College Basketball for all things off-season hoops. Locked On Coogs, primarily the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.